Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Reverend Dr. Vanessa M. Brown. I am your host for this evening, and I'm so happy to be here with you on tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about reimagining, reopening, re-envisioning in terms of coming back into sanctuary, coming back into church, how that's going to look. And I'm so glad that we have so many great guests. Before I bring the guest in, I want to thank our Facebook Live audience. I also want to thank our YouTube audience as well as those that are on Twitter. And I ask that you continue to share these conversations. We have embarked upon a series. We've been going on for about 4 or 5 weeks now, and we've had incredible guests. And tonight is no different. We have even more incredible guests that are here with us on tonight. And so I want to introduce them to you one by one. Tonight, we have Billy Michael Honor. He is a public scholar, theologian, and community organizer. Billy, come on and greet the people and tell them about what you are doing and how it's all working out for you.
Well, first of all, it's so good to be here with you, Bishop Vanessa. Thank you for your light in the world, as well as to Bishop Flunda and Bishop Pearson. But I'm really happy to be here with everyone. I am Billy Michael Honor. Right now, I'm currently serving with the Aspen Institute as the Religion and Racial Justice Fellow. And all that means is that's a lot of words to say. We're trying to help people of faith all around this country to think about how it is we build a multi-faith movement to put together an agenda for racial equity. Each of our faiths may be a movement by itself, but I believe that we're a real force when we come together for good. And so that's what we're working on this year. And I'm really happy to be here to just talk about how all of that fits in this idea of reimagining and reopening.
Incredible, Billy Michael. Thank you so much. We are so glad to have you here. And we also have Pastor Lesley Jones. She is the founder and pastor of Truth and Destiny Covenant Ministries. She's also a member of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. Pastor Lesley Jones, will you come and greet the people and let them know what you are working on? You're muted, Pastor.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here with you all this evening, Bishop-elect and Bishop Flunder and all of the guests. I'm actually, I was taken aback a little bit. I was shocked and said, oh, wow, I'm going to be on this program. So I've been more excited to hear from everyone else tonight and just excited to be with you tonight. So I am the pastor and founder of Truth and Destiny. So we are continuing to be the church on the hill here in Cincinnati. But I am also the Southwest Regional Clergy Coordinator for Faith and Public Life. And I am working and organizing clergy and people of faith around building an organization that can be sustained here in Southwest Ohio around Black voter empowerment. And so I've been working on that and also working on a gun anti-violence and gun safety project for youth and those who are high risk in being involved in some of the culture that lends itself to gun violence. So that's what I'm doing now, and enjoying the work. So my fellow community organizer, I'm glad to be with you tonight.
Great work, Pastor Lesley. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Last but certainly not least is Reverend Jeri L. Wright. She is the Director of Outreach and Executive Producer, Director of Proctor Prayerdemic. She's also the founder of the Butterfly Effect, serving incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women, their children, and families, and also the author of Preacher's Daughter, A Journey Through the Pit in the Presence of God. Reverend Jeri L. Wright, please come and greet the people and tell them what you're working on right now.
Good evening. I am, as I said earlier, still in shock. So I hear you, Pastor Lesley. I have been excited ever since the invitation really caught me off guard. I thank God for you, Dr. Vanessa, Bishop-elect, as well as Bishop Flunder, and one of my new greatest friends, Bishop Pearson, in his absence. I thank God for each of you. I am currently working on and blessed by PPP, Proctor Pride Prayerdemic, for the first time in the history of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference. We are standing in honor of Pride Month, and we have been so blessed by the community and all of those of you who have said yes. It is an exciting time in the organization. We are also working with the Advancement Project for the Georgia voting rights. And we are, my goodness, working really diligently. I just got off of an hour and a half webinar on reparations. And so I don't know if most of you know, but for those of you who do not, Reverend Dr. Mama Iva Carruthers, who is our General Secretary and one of the co-founders of the Proctor Conference, is heavy in the fight for reparations and has made great strides. And so it's a busy, busy time with the butterfly effect. That is something that the Lord told me I had to do. And I am working diligently now to ensure that everything is in place for our 501c3 so that we can really delve back heavily into the work by the end of this year. In this year of the last year and a few months, it's been a heavy season with COVID. And so although I'm a daughter of Proctor, this is my first time working as in this position, in this capacity, and taking on so many different projects as we seek to do justice in the public square, in faith-based institutions, and we are just being blessed tremendously by so many of you who have started each day with us since April 13th, as we have traveled through the multiple pandemics, particularly the coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm just grateful to be here. And I'm working on book 2. I need to finish my edits before the end of this month. So I'm just grateful and happy to be here, because that's actually a series, Preacher's Daughter. So thank you so much for the invitation. I am just excited.
That's so wonderful. So wonderful to hear all of the great things that you are all doing. Last but certainly not least, Bishop Flunder is not a guest, but she helps us move this show along, and we're so grateful for her. She is the presiding prelate of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, most of all, the senior pastor of City of Refuge United Church of Christ in Oakland, California. Please come, Bishop Flunder, and greet the people and give us a foundation for tonight's conversation, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is a great joy and a privilege to see all of your faces, authentic smiles. Hallelujah. Because this is a challenging time. There's no question about that. I think that all of us have been impacted, affected, moved along, changed. And I believe being prepared for what is next. We've had to say goodbye to some very important people in our communities, our churches, our families, and simultaneously say hello to God's what's next, which is in some ways a great blessing, and for some of us a great challenge. So we took up this mantle to have these conversations with extraordinarily important and diverse faith leaders over the last several weeks, and we had planned to do it 3 times in a row, but we can't leave it because we keep getting fresh and new ideas. Each of you, your experience in public policy, your experience as theologians, your experience with hands-on work in African American faith communities, all of these things have got to be brought to the family table. And I see the table as a round table. It doesn't have a head of the table and a foot of the table and a side of the table and such. It is a round table. Letty Russell's notion of church in the round comes up for me. What can it be if all of us, equidistant to one another, can bring our experiences together and our vision, our call, our passion, what it is that has changed in us and is changing for us. And we're probably going to end up at some point, Bishop-elect Vanessa, putting these experiences together, transcribing them, and start talking about what fresh minds have said our journey should be coming out of the COVID. I talked a little bit to Dr. Gates about this, and Henry Louis Gates. And of course, you know, he's always kind of open for something that chronologically talks about the realities of the African American faith organizations and denominations and faith journeys. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that what we are called to do by God in His time, because we didn't die, by the way, we certainly could have. Many, many great people have. And I don't lay at their feet the responsibility of having died, because they were careless. Not all of them even knew what they were dying from when they came to die in this COVID. But we have lost some great people. But I believe that we lived because we have more to do. Plain and simple. I could have been infected by the people that I coexist with in the work that we do in the inner city, the third world of the United States, as I call it. It could easily have been me. It could easily have been many of us, but we are here. And I believe it is time for us to take this pregnant opportunity in history to determine what matters, because we are pregnant. We are together with purpose, pregnant, and soon to come forth and bring forth what we have learned, I believe, in this time. This is not the first and only pregnant moment that we've had when some perfect storm has created shift and change, but we are in it now. So to determine what matters, to determine what healing this negative impact that faith has experienced can come from this. What good can come from this? Or what do we need to substantively change about how we show up as people of faith and people of African descent, people of Methodist experience? What are we going to bring to this moment? And perhaps on a very personal level, what has shifted for you? How are you different? What is it that we can jettison? And what do we need to keep going into our what's next? So we've had some very broad conversations about this. There are no pat answers. And again, all of us carry in us the seeds of the people who impacted us. We are somewhere between what was and what is to come. And I often refer to us as Acts 2. This is the second book of Acts in the process, in the flesh. And then one of these days, somebody's going to write about it, and hopefully they'll have sense enough to canonize it, because I'm so sure that it will be a blessing for generations to come. I want to encourage you, feel free to speak candidly and openly from the locus of your own experience. And let's see if we can be a blessing to this time and a blessing to the generations to come. God bless you is my prayer, and welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Bishop Flunder. I want to get right to it. And I want to ask you all a specific question as it relates to you. This question is about you. How are you faring in the midst of multiple pandemics, not just COVID-19, but all of the other things that we've been experiencing? How are you faring? And I'm going to start off with Billy Michael Honor.
Thank you for the wonderful framing, Bishop, and thank you for the question. I've been thinking a lot about this because I'm not one of those who've had a close loved one who has passed in this COVID-19 pandemic. I've had a lot of friends who've had loved ones pass. I've had a lot of other associates who passed, but in terms of like a family member, I haven't had that. But what that's done is put me in a position where I've had to be a caretaker, a source of encouragement and support during bereavement. And it's left me wondering, how was I adequately or inadequately doing this before this pandemic? Because here's the thing, people been dying, right? Death is not new to the human experience. People were dying before this pandemic, and we were being called to offer care. And even though for many years as a pastor, I offered care, and it was a part of the professional thing to do, right? But I started to think about, how do I show care as a human being to individuals I actually have no job description, responsibility to show care for? How was I walking with those people, right, in meaningful ways? So much so now that my desire is that I don't want the weight of this moment to leave me, even when this pandemic is past. I want to feel everything about what it means to walk with people through this sadness. I don't want that to leave. I want that to continue with me, so that I am constantly feeling the compassion, the true compassion, with the Greek word splanizomai, right? Where it means that it bubbles up on the inside. You can't help but be compelled to have to do something. That's how I feel in this moment when I see people in bereavement. And when the pandemic passes, my hope is that I still feel that weight, and that I learn how to be a better caretaker and walk with people through these moments of grief. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm also thinking about the ways in which death can be a transformative thing, right? And how it is we help people to really wrestle with the ways in which death can be transformative, even at the darkest moments. If it is walked through in particular ways. I think about the caterpillar who goes into the cocoon and it's dark and thinks that it's over, right? and then realizes in a moment that it turns into a butterfly. And this moment that was dark ends up being a moment of transformation. I'm not a believer in reinvention. That's some American stuff. We don't reinvent. God created us the way we were, but you can shapeshift. I'm a believer in shapeshifting, right? And so I hope that this moment becomes a moment of shapeshifting, right? Where even in this darkest moment, it begins to transform us into something we never knew and never thought we could be. But we have to walk this in the right way. And that's what I'm asking myself. How do we as the people of faith help people to walk through this moment in a way that it becomes transformative, not just a moment of sadness and dehumanizing?
That's brilliant, Billy Michael. Thank you so much. I'm going to pivot to Reverend Jeri L. Wright.
Thank you so much. In this moment, I flip-flop back in between holy rage and holy hope. And in my quiet time, I am enraged by what has taken place and what is still taking place in the African American community. Although nothing surprises me, my hope, however, is that our communities will get it, in as much as so many of us in the African American community refuse to stop, be still, take the precautionary measures, put on masks, understand that God has been up to something in the midst of these multiple pandemics. My hope is that at some point, more and more and more will begin to see. It is a little disheartening. No, it's very disheartening for me to go into public spaces and see so many, especially as I did go out once or twice, even to the grocery store, because I hardly did anything outside of the house since March, when I moved when I had to move. And to see stories on, well, social media is my news, because I gave up the regular news stations in 2008. I had to cut them off at the head. So, but so much frivolity in terms of our own lives and living. So that is a little depressing, but I still have hope for our people, and just really pray that daily more and more will see and understand and pause, even now as things are beginning to open back up and in many places fully open, but that we will pause to see what has happened. And so my hope outweighs anything else. And I am encouraged each and every day that I am able to awaken, and I am able to bring good news, be hopeful, bring hope to dark spaces. I have lived in a dark space, and bless God for blessing me to be the hope in those dark spaces. And I just, on a personal level, really have no clue what God is doing in my personal life, but I'm standing hopeful and waiting to see the next. And so in the face of all of this, when we first went into isolation, when we were first shut down, I was still in Chicago. And at that point, so many people were freaking out that I knew. People were dying that I knew. People did die who I was very close to. But like you, Billy Michael, I didn't have any blood relatives to die of COVID. However, so many, and because my family is relatively small, so many friends are my family. And so we were hit hard. But when we first got shut down, my first thought was, this is what it feels like to be inside incarceration, where so many people were freaking out. Having walked in the shoes of an incarcerated person, I knew exactly what to do. So it was as if I had to rethink the injustice through which I lived and come even into a more fuller understanding that God was preparing me for even more than I could see at that point. I knew, and I always say this, it's in my book, I knew that if God allowed that to happen, after God knew the truth, along with my mother and me, then God had something for me to do and something for me to get. And so in these moments, I've just constantly drawn from the feeling of the injustice of incarceration, whether a person is guilty or innocent. And I met many of an innocent person in incarceration. There is a shift in life that if you don't believe, you will lose your mind. And that is what I saw. So many people, saying and feeling. And so even in hearing all of that throughout, especially the early days of the shutdown, it was hold on to your faith. If you believe in God, you've got to know that God has something for us. And you are not behind steel bars or steel walls or barbed wire. You can still be with your family, even if it's in a virtual space. And so just, to keep believing and trusting and standing on your word, but to know, because I don't know about you all, but so many people I know were like, I can't believe we can't go outside. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I'm like, but you're breathing. You are breathing and God is moving. So stand still for real and go deep within and listen to the voice of God. And see, then soon you'll be able to move and go back out and have your drink and do whatever else you need to do. But for now, do cocktail parties on Zoom if you need to do that. So you won't be at home drinking alone. So I am just grateful and standing hopeful.
That's wonderful. That's so good. And for the record, Reverend Jeri, I've learned how to make some mean drinks. Amen.
That's what I'm talking about.
I got some new things to share with the saints. Praise God.
That's what I'm talking about.
Only for those that drink. Pastor Lesley E. Jones.
Well, thank you for, again, for this invitation. And right now, what I really feel in a personal way, for me, even being in this conversation right now is a continuation of my healing. COVID, I had already had some significant losses in my life, and death wise, lost my stepfather. And then 11 months later, my father, and buried him in Arlington Cemetery in the midst of COVID, right at the beginning. Only 10 people able to be there. And was one of the most surreal moments I'd had. I've been there before, but to watch a hearse go that long stretch of the way to bury someone, and then in the back of my mind, thinking about all of the lives that have been lost to COVID, and thinking about all of the people. And then starting this year off with the death of one of my first church member, my first deacon, my ride or die. That was, very, very hard. And it's still hard for me. And then doing the kind of justice work that I do in the political arena that I kind of travel in, I became weary with pandemic, protest, and pandemonium. And, being one of those leaders who believes, I don't send my kids out into the streets by themselves. So all last summer, masked up, I was out in the street with Black Lives Matter folks, and I was organizing folks, and I was out there. And at the same time, I'm like, I want to knock somebody out right now, to be honest with you, and I kept hearing, be angry, but sin not. Right. But in the midst of all of that, I really wanted to do that. And then I was very frustrated with my, honestly, with my white colleagues who kept wanting to have discussions. And I said, I'm tired of talking. We've been talking. Y'all talk to each other. And I checked out. And I shared this, even with my congregation. A healing that came through this was in February. It's Black History Month. And there was a white UCC congregation that was going through a pastoral transition, and they needed a pulpit supply for a couple of weeks. And so they called me. And the call, I'm telling you, this is where the healing really began. The call was not because it was Black History Month, because I would have certainly said no. The call came because, and the person who called me said, "We believe you have the message to help them transition." And that began a healing in me, because that was an indication that some folks were listening when I was saying, I don't want to be at the table in this conversation. You need to talk amongst yourselves. You need to figure this out. And that became a place of healing. And I believe for me in this season, it is not more about, it's more about who has changed, not what has changed, but who has changed. And for me, the change has been that I hear Ephesians 2:10, right? That that we are God's workmanship, and that there were works that were created for my hands, for your hands, and no one else can do that work but me, but you. And so I began to understand that perhaps that's why I'm still here. That's why I survived this thing. There was a pandemic in 1908, but people survived that. There was pandemic in 1991. People survived. We survived it. There was some epidemics that hit the earth, and we've survived those, and we've survived them for such a time as this. And many of like me, many of people who do the kind of work that I do, think and say things like, if only I was born in the wrong time. No, we were born right now. This is our movement and our time. And as people of faith, we have to bring something new to this. And it's a new energy. It's a new excitement in organizing. And we've got to speak truth. No more kumbaya moments. They tried to have a march here. Let's get together, and it's about unity. And this is 2 weeks after George Floyd, has been brutally murdered. I am not coming together with you to have this moment. We got to deal and wrestle with the truth. And what we have to really understand is that we have the authority. And I think that is sometimes a struggle for us as Black folks. We kind of back down, but we have the authority to speak truth to what is really happening, and to help people understand that. And so I think when, I called it, a season of pandemic, protest, and pandemonium. And in the midst of that, I am so glad that we also have a God that creates out of chaos. And so in this chaotic moment, there is an awesome creation that is happening. And we are the people, and we are the people, hear what I'm saying, that are to be co-creators in the midst of what's to come.
Bishop Flunder.
Well, that's a whole lot of preaching fodder right there when you put all that together. It's the preaching side of me just went in several different directions. But I will say this to you briefly, because I want so much to hear from you all. I have been saying, and I want to continue to say, that I have now given myself permission to be. I want to do more being than fixing. I've spent the majority of my adult life trying to fix people, trying to fix systems, trying to fix religion, trying to fix. And I think one of the greatest contributions that I can make right now is to be a living epistle, seen and read of men. So what does it mean? That I will not just speak the letter, I will be the letter. I want to be. And being is dangerous in religion. because we are some of the most non-transparent people in the whole world. And we have learned, and we learned it really well. It was taught to us. I shared with the folks that my granddaddy, who was a part of Bishop Mason's rich reunion of bishops, he went that far back. My mother's father, Bishop E.E. Hamilton, the first Kojic bishop in my family. And when I was coming along, because I was the last child of his last child. So my granddaddy was up in his 60s when in some change when I was born. When I grew up some size, I found out that my grandfather had a bottle of Morgan David wine on the very top shelf in the kitchen. And when I began to be my grandmother's helper to wash dishes and put dishes away, I discovered it. And my grandfather said to me, now, Gal, that was my name for him. Don't tell nobody what you saw. I take that for the stomach's sake. And he quoted the scripture, just said, Paul said, have a little wine for the stomach's sake. So all my life, I thought the wine Paul was talking about was grape juice. You understand what I'm saying? Because, the saints couldn't explain to me how we couldn't drink wine, but Paul and Jesus and them did. So I thought certainly it must have been grape juice, right? But the thing is that I kept that secret, literally, until my grandfather died. That my grandfather, Morgan David. So what do you mean? Like 5% alcohol or something like that. What? But he was in this atmosphere, right? Why am I lifting that up? Because I want us to emerge from this time with the strength to be. We've been robbed of that. One of the reasons that I think faith has such a hard time being inclusive, radically inclusive, is because we have drawn a line in the sand that no one is really honoring, essentially. But when people do cross it, they do it stealthily. They sneak and cross it. And the line is still there, and it's not real anymore. It's not authentic anymore. It's just, I let you think about me what I want you to think about me, which may not, in fact, be who I really am. And the totality of who I am is beautiful and powerful. I have said it, and I'll say it again. A great struggle that we have around the work of women and the presence and power of women, and the work and power of the LGBT community, the work and power of people of African descent, has everything to do with a misreading, as we all know, a convenient misreading of the text, right? But I do think that the obligation to pull the cover off of that thing is on those of us who are in this time. And we don't owe it to our dead grandparents, to our parents. We don't owe it to the children that we have of the flesh and spirit and their children. We don't owe them to continue the realities and the farce and farce is. Is there such a thing as a farce is? Plural. Farce is. That exist in and around religion and faith. We have got to be able to do that, as our young people are already redesigning something that includes what it is that I'm talking about right now. And finally, this. We have a task. And again, not to make a wicked history feel better, even when we were partakers of, at times, the wicked history of religion and faith. Even when we were partakers because we kept silent about it. And silence does give consent, without question. But we are going to have to throw the light on it, the spotlight, and say that going forward, we will not be this way again. We are not going to hold on to, I don't care how comfortable they are. This stuff is hard. I'm a gospel music singer and artist, and you know that, and have a history of it. And there's some songs I can't sing anymore. I just can't sing them because theologically, they just don't work for me. But when people call on me and say, well, we want you to sing this, we want you to sing that, it's a struggle. I think you understand what I'm saying. It's a problem. And I said, well, I just can't sing that. There's some things I can't say. I can't say millions didn't make it and I'm one of the ones who did. I just can't do that. And I can go on and on and on. I got lots of lyrics. I'm full of lyrics. But I cannot say that. And while I'm saying what I'm saying, and I'm going to stop, Bishop-elect Vanessa, while I'm saying what I'm saying, I'm also aware that culturally, some things and sounds are very dear to me. And to in any way refashion some of those realities feels like they've lost their authenticity to me because they are dear to me and very dear. So I will have to reacculturate myself and shift myself. I think the church has got to reacculturate ourselves to justice language, justice music, justice practice, even when it is culturally comfortable. Must Jesus bear the cross alone? And all the world go free. No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. No, I don't want that. I'm not buying into that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not getting up on that cross. I'm just not doing it. And if you try to get me to do it, you're gonna run into something. There's no salvific value in that kind of suffering. I just need to go ahead and say that. Can I say that? When the saints told me you got to suffer, I don't want to suffer. And I got news for you. If you are wanting to suffer, something wrong with you. Can I go ahead and say that, Bishop-elect Vanessa? Something is wrong with you. They got places in San Francisco where you can go and buy some suffering. But I'm trying to tell you that you don't, if you just out there wanting to suffer, it's a dead cat on the line somewhere in my thinking, right? I am shifting internally. I'm giving myself hope. I'm giving myself life. I'm giving myself room to be authentically me. That is the first church. I am the first member of the new church that we need to become. And then I believe that if we can do that battle within ourselves and divest ourselves of the things that hindered us from being fully and beautifully what God intended that we be, we will be able to help others to get to that. So I'm in process. Pray my strength in the Lord, as I can hear the saints say. Pray my strength in the Lord. All right.
Thank you, Bishop. And Bishop has already answered the second question and the third one simultaneously. So I want to ask you all this, and is what did you learn and what is different for you? What did you learn and what is different for you? You heard Bishop talk about some of the things that's different for her. She's learning. She says she's no more fixing. She's being. What did you learn? What is different for you? Reverend Jeri L. Wright.
What I have learned is because of all that I have lived with, I understand fully what you mean by shifting into being. I am in a space of being that I rarely talk about because most people won't get it. And it is because of all that I have already been through before this pandemic. And so I have just learned to continue to, for real, trust God in all things and continue to talk through with people. I've learned that so many saints they will not grasp hold to their faith and stand firm and believing God for this too shall pass as we are moving through. I've learned so much and have so many reasons to be grateful each and every day. I've learned that in as much as my mother has always called me a social butterfly because I love people. I love being in community with people. I've learned that I am okay staying in the house all day long. And it is really okay, except it's not good for my workout regimen. But I have learned that I am at peace and okay in the midst of these storms. And it sounds crazy to a lot of people. Most can't understand, but I have, in the midst of the deaths, in the midst of all of the grief on top of grief on top of grief, I have learned that God has me in such a separate space, separate and apart from so many of my loved ones. And the peace I thought I already knew has even gotten greater. And I am just, I remain hopeful, and I'm okay. Really okay. I learned to say no. And as a matter of fact, I've said no so often since the end of the Proctor conference. I just had to put a hard stop on everything I said. And this is something that I said to myself, I'm not doing anything for at least the next 3 months. This was the first yes I have given to invitations, the very first yes, because I just couldn't. I realized that I live out my passion in my work, and I poured so much in that I took away from so much of my own energy and strength. And so I learned to say no, and I learned to pause. I have learned to find strength in my quiet time and not taking on extra responsibilities. And I'm just grateful. I know there's a part two. What have I learned? And
what is different for you?
Oh, what's different? What's different is being okay with not being in physical community with people. That's very different for me. It has gotten, I started on this trajectory in actually 2008. But being in this space now, it is so very different for me. I used to fly at least once every 10 days on an airplane back and forth somewhere, and living in 2 states at one point in my life. And now what's different is I feel uneasy on a plane, especially when they started filling that middle seat. The moment somebody coughs, and the moment somebody sneezes, it's like, oh God, please, please just cover us. Don't let us get anything. Don't let us contract anything. Let that deadly pestilence pass on through and away from here. So I've learned that in as much as I love being physically in spaces with people, I am okay not being in a physical space with people. And I still love hard. That's very different for me to be in spaces virtually, and I'm loving it, loving the virtual space. And I'm okay. I'm a hugger. I'm okay not hugging, and I'm okay not kissing on the cheek. That is very, very different for me, as well as the thought of going back inside of a church around people, because it is extremely different that I get anxiety just thinking of what if there are so many people in this space. I had to, for me, go to my favorite cousin's homegoing service. It was a memorial service, and en route from San Diego to the Carolinas, I kept wondering, is there going to be a lot of people in here? How are we going to handle this? How are we going to do this? And as God would have it, there were only maybe about 30, 40 people in a space that sat at least 500. But that was different, very, very different for me, because I am a people person. I love being in spaces with people and being in community and hugging and kissing and loving on my loved ones. And now I am like, it had to be okay for me because my mother was not having it for Thanksgiving or Christmas, which was also very different for me. And I didn't handle it too well. I did my best, but I had a little attitude about that. And so that too was different, that, I had to spend holidays away, but I survived and it became okay. Although when Mother's Day came, I was like, no, we ain't doing. Easter came, no, I'm coming to see you. But thank God she had been vaccinated and she wasn't as nervous. So just all of this newness of going back out into spaces and places where people are and being a little concerned about illnesses, and I'm fully vaccinated, but just that in and of itself is what is very different for me.
Thank you, Reverend Jeri. Pastor Lesley.
Well, I think what's really different for me is that I have learned to embrace the moment and just be in that moment and allow things. I sometimes can be one who wants to be in control. I want to fix it. I want to make something happen. I need to know, like, we got to get this together. And the pandemic really taught me how to let go and just be in that moment and be okay with that, and not get anxious, because I also learned what a perfectionist is, and realized that, oh, is that what my problem is? A perfectionist is not what I thought, right? So and why sometimes I wanted that control, because I wanted to be this way and I want that. But I learned in this how to let go. And that also helped me, I think, in my pastorate, in letting the people do what the people needed to do and be okay with them. Be okay. Even now, being okay that, they're not coming to church. They're not going to come physically into the building, some folks. And it's okay. Doesn't mean they've gone away anywhere. They're just not coming here. But so that is very different for me, and it taught me a new language. As far as being able to communicate with people, and not being as, I guess, harsh and hard or determined, that we're going to make this happen, because we didn't have to. And so I think that is what has changed in me, is that I also learned to be okay with not being certain, not having an answer, and allowing myself to get emotional and be and say, oh, I'm feeling what you feeling, and not show the stone face as much. Yeah, I'm nervous just like you're nervous, and I don't have any more answers than you have, and that's okay. And being in that space. So I think that is mostly what I've learned and what I've gained from this. And then that, I have my part to play, and just to do my part, and not so much worry about how my part and your part and that is going to work. That's God's work. God's going to work it all together for our good, if that's what I really believe. And so that's what I've been challenged by, for this, is what do I really believe? What do I really believe about God and in this time? And if I really do believe that, things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose, then why am I anxious about any of this? And I'm gonna, I got okay with dying. I got real okay with death. My prayer used to be, well, God, I don't want to die tonight, because now it's just, God, your will be done. But I got okay. I had to get okay, because we never know, right? And so you know, and sometimes when you're trying to lead people and help people and minister to people who are losing loved ones, and you yourself having some struggles with death yourself, you got to figure out, okay, where are you in this? And so to be okay with that is where I am.
Thank you, Pastor Lesley. Billy Michael.
Yeah, I would say that I've been learning through this time, and it's really not so much to do with the pandemic. It's just in events in and around my own life over this past year that just coincided with all that was happening with the pandemic, is the value of unliving some things. For a long time, I understood the value of unlearning, right? I've been a proponent of dealing with religious miseducation for a long time, but I realized that in some ways we were falling into this this westernized understanding of thinking that everything has to do with just it's a heady thing, right? And unlearning is important, but it's more important to unlive some things, right? We don't live out a lot of the truth that we know. And part of what I've been wrestling with this year is this idea of how do I actually live the truth that I know? And it starts with the value of unliving. And I'll be more specific. A lot of this unliving has to do with a lot of what I learned in church culture, a lot of what the religiosity of a lot of what we've created that has produced, I'm a product of the church, right? I came from the hospital and they brought me right to the altar to be baptized, right? I ain't never known a time where I was not in a religious community. Then at 15, I turned around and started preaching for 22 years of my first late teenage to young adult life, pursuing vigorously ministerial excellence. I mean, so much so that I got accepted to Morehouse and said I ain't going because I want to go learn the Bible, and went to Bible college. Right. I mean, that's the type of mentality that I had in terms of wanting to be rooted in the pursuit of that. The pursuit of that led me into many ways that things I've had to unlearn, and not just unlearn, but also processes of where I had to be responsible for the ways in which I have produced also corrupt behavior from things I learned in the culture, in the church culture, right? And walking and still walking paths of corrective justice for myself, right? And so the unlearning of that is part of where I am, and becoming comfortable with understanding that I am coming to know parts of myself that I've never known before, right? And being comfortable and being able to say, you know what, there are parts of this unlearning process that are going to, freedom that I've actually been teaching people about is a freedom that I'm having to embrace in a real way. To say certain things like, you know what, actually, I actually can say with, wholeheartedly that if we don't have conceptions of church that revolve around more than just convening people in the building for corporate worship, if our value add to society is nothing more than gathering people for corporate worship, then we will lose our relevance. You understand? Our value add to society has to be more than corporate worship. Before the pandemic, people only spent 5 to 2% of their time in some type of religious activity. 95% of their time they spent outside of our buildings, outside of our programs. We should be invested in engaging people in what they're doing with their 95%, right? And so I've come to free enough to say to myself that I no longer want to be connected to things that are trying to trap people in processes of trying to get people in the building for our programs, for our agendas, so that we can become the icons of their lives, right? And asking myself, what does freedom look like apart from these institutions? What does living outside of the church cycle look like? And I'm going to say another thing, finally, I've also been learning how to live outside of the news cycle. As an organizer, I lived in the news cycle for several years. I was running from one thing to the next. And the news, in so many ways, controls our lives and tries to tell us what we should be concerned about, to tell us what we should be, paranoid about, right? But now I've decided I'm going to reclaim my life and live outside the news cycle. I will decide what constitutes for me something that I should be concerned about. I'm not going to be concerned about it just because everybody else is. So now when people send me a text message, what we doing with no, I'm not marching with you. Not because it's not important. That's not where I am right now. Right? I'm not signing the letter. I'm not signing the petition because we got to live. And preachers, please learn how to preach outside of the news cycle. Don't let people push you into thinking that everything comes up, you got to preach about it. Why you got to preach about it? When I used to pastor, the white people or some of the white folks in Atlanta, liberal white folks would come. Whenever somebody gets shot or there'd be a so-called racial justice issue, they would come to our worship service. They want to hear what I got to say. And after a while, I started saying, you know what, I'm not going to be trapped by this. You understand what I'm saying? First of all, right? First of all, this is a kind of weird S&M type thing because they came because they liked the beating I was going to give them. They kind of liked it. You know what I'm saying? Like they knew what I was going to say. So they liked to come so I could beat them and they get pleasure out of it. And I said, first of all, we're not going to do that, right? If that's what you're into, that's fine. But I don't want to do that. And so I'm learning to not get caught in those types of traps and find freedom, whatever that looks like in the moment for me. Also, Bishop and Dr. I know why you invite me here now because I came to get these mixology. I come to know these drink mixtures because that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here for. So we can't leave without getting at least one drink recipe.
I got you, brother, and trust me, I got you. That was brilliant. Because you actually are leading me into the very next question. And I love when people do that. And so the next question is, churches are opening everywhere. No mask. All of this is happening and it's happening in rapid pace. So what are we re-envisioning? What are we reimagining in terms of church? You don't have to be the pastor of that church to answer this question. If you are, that's great. But if you're not a pastor, what are you reimagining when you're going back? Because the bottom line is that focus, like Billy said, 95% of the focus outside the church, right? I could tell you where they at, Billy. Okay. I could tell you where they at. And I'm fixing to start something where they at, because that's how that works, right? But yeah, not coming into the building again so that they can make an icon of us, but going outside to where they are. So what are we reimagining? What is in your heart, your mind, your spirit? What are you re-envisioning just in your framework of church and what you know about church and as a pastor and where you see church going? And so I'm going to start with Billy.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this because I'm really interested to hear what everyone else has to say. But I mean, there are two things that I've really been thinking about. One of which is we need to start more ministries and theologies that deal with public health, right? I think that what's very clear right now is that we have a very, very real need to find ways to connect people to the resources and to the possibilities that they need so that they can live vibrant lives. And you can't do that without health. And we have to talk more about it. Our theologies that we have are insufficient. If there's anything that we should know at this moment is that they are. That this pestilence and that this disease, this virus came, and we in many faith communities were as inadequately prepared as so many of our other institutions, right? And I don't want to give pastors more work. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is that we just need to start thinking and reflecting more about what is the relationship of our faith, right, to these issues. The other thing I'll say is we need disaster preparedness plans for congregations, right? Listen, let me tell you something. These disasters are going to continue to happen, right? They're going to continue to come, these natural disasters. And part of what we need is to really start thinking about what do disaster preparedness plans look like for our communities, right? Particularly in rural communities, right? That are really affected by these things, because our people depend on us when these things happen to be able to give them direction about the ways in which they can navigate these things. And so one of the things I've been really encouraging congregations to do is really think about what does a disaster preparedness plan look like in your area, in the places in which you are, so that you can begin to say that. And then the last thing I'll say very practically around this in terms of what I've been thinking about in church is that really we have an opportunity to revisit some of the very early formations of Christian faith, right? If people would choose to do so, in the sense of understanding that the church in its early conception says that they were Christians because they were known by their love, right? And that they weren't Christians because they were known by their buildings, right? They weren't Christians because they were known by their institutions. They were known by the way in which they interacted with one another, right? They were known by the quality of their relationships, you see? And I think part of what we need to start emphasizing is looking more at what are the quality of the relationships that we call Christian, right? Because a lot of times what happens is we find ways to really focus on other things outside of the real core of what it is, which is relationship, right? At the core, what are the quality of your relationships you have with your leaders, with those who you are in community with, that ought to really tell what is the quality of your relationship with God, right? And we have to begin to remove all of these other things that we've created that help to try to disassociate, to try to dissociate ourselves from the parts in which we want to grow the most. Right? Your budgets, your buildings, all of these things are not the assessment of how it is that we are living out the Christian commitment. The Christian commitment is the quality of our relationships and the convictions that we have about the truth we claim to know, right? And so I think this is an opportunity to redo that again, and to think about that in some key ways. And then some of these churches and denominations, they just need to die.
Oh, bless you.
Well, why don't you just say what you really feel is what I'm trying to say. And die today. Need to just go and die today.
Listen, he put the needle on the record, okay?
He did do that.
Right. Reverend Jeri L. Wright.
I'm not coming behind Michael. Billy Michael. That was awesome. Love the way you dropped the mic. You said that and then turned your mute button right on. Oh, so before I start, I made a note for myself. The disaster preparedness for churches. One thing the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference does have is a very thorough emergency preparedness toolkit for congregations and communities. So that just stuck in my head. And now, as we prepare, I know what we need to be prepared for is fewer people going back into the building, especially our millennials, Gen X's, Gen Zers. The majority that I've heard from are not going back in the building. I have been in virtual worship the majority of the last 13 years. And I'm very comfortable with not stepping back into the building. I think we definitely, for many churches didn't make it to this point. And it's probably just what you said, the ones that needed to just go on and die. There are some many have actually financially flourished in this virtual space and have not only been able to do things within the congregation, but have given thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars away to people in the community. One church in particular I know of, Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church, for several weeks at the start of the pandemic, they were going out every Friday and they would go to some place in the community and they were literally giving away $10,000 a week in gift cards to individuals, just helping people in the community. More of what has taken place outside of the church since the beginning of this coronavirus pandemic, I believe will continue. The work to be done outside of the walls of the church is what is most important. And I've always been a firm believer of meeting people where they are. So like Bishop-elect Vanessa said, I think it was last week, go right on over there to where they are, in the bar, in the club, hanging out in the park, have church, meet them where they are, and have church outside of the church building. The church building is one of the reasons that many in the African American community won't go to church or even consider worshiping because of church hurt. And so now they don't have to worry about going into the space. They can actually worship virtually, or there are some who have actually already begun to work outside and have worship outside, meeting people exactly where they are. I do believe more of our elders who have a great love for being inside of the church will want to come back, especially fully vaccinated and following protocol. I know several elders whose concern has been tremendous with respect to getting the coronavirus and COVID-19. And so as much as they have missed being inside the building, they were comfortable. They learned to become comfortable at home having worship. So what we definitely should prepare for is a hybrid situation for members who want to be inside. But I think the work on the outside of the building is what is most critical to who we are as Africans in the diaspora and Africans in the Christian community. This has brought an awareness to so many who couldn't even see past their own beliefs, their own church, and being inside their own rituals of going inside and having the same ritual week in and week out. And because of so many devout African American Christians and what they have learned in this time, we just need to be prepared to do the both and, being inside as well as continuing to feed the masses through virtual spaces, even those churches who could not afford to have the internet and be on Zoom or any other platform, Facebook Live, but those who were still, or who found it most comfortable to be on the phone and do conference calls for worship. Those things will definitely need to continue as we think about what this is going to look like and how we are to step back in. I believe more protocols will be put in place. We won't be able to serve communion in the same way. We won't be able to sing in choirs in the same way. We shouldn't even think of being in spaces in a choir loft as closely as everybody was breathing on everybody else as they began to open their mouths to sing praises to the Lord. So all of that will look different and will be different and should remain different until life begins to shift again. But for now, with so much still unknown, even with us getting vaccinated, for those of us who are, you still don't know. We still are living in a state of unknown, and we need to be prepared to minister to those inside who want to be inside, but definitely the ministry is so desperately needed outside of the walls of the church. And so you are absolutely right, Billy Michael, that 95%, we need to get involved in that. And that is what the church will definitely look like as the doors begin to open back up, being more involved with the 95% of people's lives, not just thinking about what we do on a Sunday or on a Wednesday in terms of Bible study and prayer service, but a 7-day-a-week ministry in which I learned to live church as a lifestyle. And so for me, it wasn't just about what happened on Sunday. Sunday worship was my greatest favorite day of the week, but greatest time because I love to be in worship with people. However, I was not as in love with the idea of staying in community with them during that 95% of the time because of so much churchiness and mess that goes on and takes place in churches. And so you made an excellent point. Being involved in that 95% of folks' lives outside of the walls of the church, that is exactly how we will look as we continue to move and prepare for being inside.
Thank you, Reverend Jeri. Pastor Lesley?
So I have just three words: repurpose, repair, launch. That's been my my focus. Repurpose, and I think that one of the things that we have to do is repurpose these. I now some of them are mausoleums. I'm with you, brother Billy. Some of these mausoleums need to be repurposed. Right? They were dead before COVID. They stinking now that COVID hit, and so we need to repurpose these places, and repurpose not just the physical building, but repurpose the people. Right, the people themselves, right, have been coming, and they've been there. We've been healing, we've been delivering, we're doing all of this, and now they're just sitting. And they need to be repurposed, and then reallocated, reassigned back out into that vineyard. Go do something. That's what I've been telling my folks. Like, go do something, right? The other thing is repair. Even in our in our social justice, radically inclusive congregations, we have hurt, we have pain. In all of our churches throughout, there's pain, and we need to repair. We need to repair those relationships, and I think that it's important in repairing those relationships that we talk about it. We got a lot of mental health stuff that needs to be dealt with. Our church has particularly started a virtual mental health ministry. It's open to anybody. We deal with everything from trauma to, how to get out of toxic relationships, talking about that toxic, talking about how you were hurt, what's going on. Coming up on Juneteenth, we're talking about the trauma of racism. And this is one of the things that I want people to, I've been really touting that. Yes, we oftentimes look at Black folks and say we got all this damage from racism. But I was a part of a panel doing some work at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. And I heard a white woman tell her story of her 14-year-old brother that her father took to a lynching. And the young man never recovered. And, back then they just said, oh, he had to go away. They had to put him away. Not that he had to go, right? Because he could not handle what he saw, because there was obviously something in him that rose up. And how she talked about how they were never able to speak about their brother again until their father died. To me, that's trauma of racism. That's some trauma that she experienced, her siblings, and her experience. So even white folks need to talk about those traumas. And they need that healing, and stop having the conversation about how to fix us and heal us, but how to also fix and heal themselves, right? And maybe we also have something going on now, Black flight, that left the Black church, went over to the mega church with the white pastor, and now they running back. They don't know what to do. But many of those people are sitting at home, not going to any church, because they said, I tried my folks, that didn't work. I tried the other folks, that didn't work. Now where? Again, that's that repair, I believe. And that's the work. And we can show that and do that by, just what Billy said, that, they knew those Christians, early Christians, by their love. And are we loving? And the first thing, we have to love each other. I tell people oftentimes we want to preach the word to the world, but we need to preach the word to ourselves, right? The Bible, it wasn't for the world. It wasn't for them outside the church. It was for the church. But we always want to put it on folks outside. And we need to preach that, right? Do we love each other? Do we show that? And so I think that that's what we have to do. And then we have to launch that. So, I'm really at the fact of repurposing our building. We've got a whole lot of other stuff. We got to be entrepreneurial minded, right? We're having pop-ups. Let's have some pop-ups, right? We want to be the solution for some of the issues that are happening in our community. We got myriads of Black entrepreneurs with nowhere to set up shop. But you got a huge fellowship hall. You got a huge church building that they can come and set up shop. I know somebody talking about no, it's not. You're helping your community. And that's the kind of thing that we need to do. Stop talking about the bad little so-and-so, Rico and Shanika and them, and bring Rico and Shanika and them into your house and help them and teach them. And so these are the things that we have to do. And I don't think that it's necessarily something new, but it's the church I grew up in. I learned how to be an orator because I stood up and said my Easter speech when I was 3 years old. He lives. And I'm still saying he lives, right? So I learned that. I learned my history in the church basement. But we've gotten away from even loving our own selves enough to teach and to build up our folks, right? And so we want to come in and be all glossy, but we need to get practical, roll up the sleeves, and I believe through this time, those churches that we've seen survive are those churches that have demonstrated their love. We're not a humongous congregation, but we've survived when I've seen the church across town shut their doors. They don't know if they're coming back, but we survived because we didn't have $15,000 and $25,000 in our coffers, but we knew some people that did. And they said, you are faithful. Here, take this money and bless some folks. And that's what we did. So now who shows up? And that's what I'm about. Let's feed the people. Let's feed them what they need. If it's natural food, we feed them that. If it's a listening ear, we're there to listen. We got to bandage some folks up, repair them, repurpose our buildings, repurpose our work, and then launch out into the deep.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lesley. Excellent. So I have questions, right? Kirk Whalum has a question, but I'm going to go to Bishop Flunder. I want to hear her thoughts on this last group of things, but I need to see Kirk Whalum's question come into the box.
Because I get a question. I like that. Let me tell you something real quick.
Yeah.
Because I definitely want to take his question and other questions. I'm sick. I turned 65 in the COVID, and in a few days I'll be 66. And all of that happened in the COVID. I need to put that out there. The thing that I most want to say about it is it happened like 3 weeks. And when I say that, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but my intention by saying that is that it happened so fast. And I know that part of the reason that it happened so fast, that, time starts to move very quickly when you get into routine. And I want to lift up the fact that I am encouraging us to move into and to grab hold to and embrace things that are completely new, fresh, and different. Because it is routine that makes life speed by incredibly fast. And we've been in now the COVID routine. So there are parts of this part of the experience that we need to break the monotony. Do something fresh and new and unusual. And I told you all that I become a plant parent. I'm a plant mother now. I didn't grow nothing. Nothing didn't grow for me. I don't care what somebody gave me. It died after about 2 weeks, and that was the end of it. But now it's become a passion for me. And all of my plant children are all healthy. And I do speak over them, and I do things that I need to do to help them to live. I also threaten them. And I'll tell them, okay, now, don't you die, because we'll get another one just like it. You know, it's that kind of, but the reason that I'm connected to them like I am is because I've allowed myself some different things. And what is the gist? The gist of what I'm saying is that we need to make our remaining days matter. I hope you hear my heart. Not just our COVID remaining days, but I think we need to get a focus on making our remaining days matter. However long we are going to live from now on, testify to yourself that I will live my best and highest life for the rest of my life. Make that decision, and then require all things around you to agree. Because self-care is holy work. Self-care is holy work. This is all you can bring to the party. This is all you have to bring. So what you want to do is take care of it. And I would say that an organized response to food and shelter insecurity is going to be incredibly important. We need to see the people. I embrace everything that everyone has said about that. We need to see the people. We're not going to be going to heaven for being faithful to choreography. So I'm with you. Church is choreography. I don't see that, right? I see us bringing heaven to earth by making sure that we are caring about people, and doing that while we are pushing back against everything that says that this time means that we should have shelter insecurity by amassing guns and building underground bunkers and filling up with Jimmy Baker food. This is not at all God's intention for this time, right? Come out wherever you are, okay? Dig out. And let's start embracing the holiness and the holy work of caring for people and being cared for. Love me. Everybody that I'm looking at, I need you to love me. And I want to love you shamelessly, okay? Because I need to be loved. And then I also need to love. And I need to be able to see faith as something other than trying to control and force people to agree with what I believe. So if it is the Buddha, if it is Muhammad, if it is earth-based, if it is African indigenous faith, if it is Native American indigenous faith, whatever it is, if it sees and embraces the divine, even if it is not the divine of my understanding, my heart and my mind and my spirit, and not just so we can get together for an interfaith service, but my heart and my mind and my spirit knows that God is bigger and broader than this little bitty box that we put God in. And you've heard me say before, if I'd been born in Islamabad, I'd be a Muslim. And I would think that would be the thing to be. I was born in the belly and in the lap of the Trinity-based Pentecostal, classical Pentecostal church. And I grew up thinking that was the only place God could move. We've got to be able to love humanity differently and embrace and respect other people's understandings of the divine so that we can make holy the work of helping humans live fully and entirely their best and highest selves. And start with the man or woman in the mirror. Start with the man or woman in the mirror. All right? There you have it.
Thank you, Bishop Flunder. Facebook Live and Twitter and YouTube, thank you all for hanging in there with us. I got a bonus question for you all. You only have 2 minutes. I know you all are preachers, but that's all you got. And the question is, if money were no object, what would be your ministry dream come true? If money were no object, what would be your ministry dream come true? I want to let Kevin Whalum know that Reverend Jeri is going to answer you directly. And Luther Lewis, we see your question. We're going to put it up and prayerfully Billy Michael Honor, Pastor Lesley, and Reverend Jeri will go back to this particular question. But this last question, and Tony McNeil, I see your question too. And they'll go back to yours and answer within the chat. But this, 2 minutes, that's what you got. Billy Michael Honor, hit it.
I don't know. That's a loaded question for me. I'll say this really quickly. I think it goes to Tony's question. I'm really invested in how we disrupt this system of productivity that is stressing and robbing people of their lives. I think I would invest in a ministry of leisure, right? How do we begin to teach people how to live lives of leisure and work less and live more?
Bless you, kind sir. I got to come where you are. Amen. Pastor Lesley E. Jones.
Well, Billy stole the thunder, right? So we learn how to relax and rest. That would be certainly a part of the ministry that I would. But I also would see a ministry that is like a one-stop shop. Come here. You got a vision. I see rooms where people can go in and they can talk vision with folks, and they got a business they want to start. They've got a dream that they have, and someone just sits and listens. I see creative people creating that for them, and them walking out and here's your business plan. Here's how you're going to go make that happen. And so I think I would invest in a place that would allow people to come and leave being their best selves.
Excellent. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Reverend Jeri L. Wright.
I think in this moment, especially this month of Pride, if money were no object, I would travel globally and teach people to love the being, as you said, but to love unconditionally, to love people for who they are, beings. There's no better way. Teach, educate so that others understand, so that we can get rid of these biases and live from the beings that we were created to be. I just see it worldwide, being able to get people to understand and to love. We are all created by God. Whatever God they call God, whatever name they call God, whatever God they believe in, we were all created to do just that, to love one another for who God created them to be, without question, just because they are God's creation. And so if money were no object, that's what I would do. Just travel globally to teach the lesson of love and loving from the core of who you are. Loving all people without biases and being able to embrace everything there is about life and be okay with it, because it is all love. We were all birthed out of creation, was birthed out of love. And so that's where
beautiful.
I am.
I love that.
I'm praised.
Yes. Thank you all so very much, Billy Michael Honor, Pastor Lesley E. Jones, Reverend Jeri L. Wright. You've been wonderful. I'm going to place this portion of this live broadcast in the hands of Bishop Flunder, who I have so many comments that are being made about Bishop Flunder's comments. We're going to place this portion in her hands, and she's going to give us our first announcement.
Well, I would certainly like to close with saying to everyone, thank you so very, very much. I even see you, Luther Lewis, and I'm with you. I am so sure that the history and legacy of the Black church begins, particularly the Hush Harbor history of the Black church, begins with us finding our way to one another in beautiful and powerful, and as Mr. Jeri said, loving, calming, present, faithful, authentic relationship. Let that be the beginnings of our new future and new way to be. I hear that in my heart today also. So I want to thank all of you who have been a part of Beyond the Gatekeepers. God bless you tonight. And I'm going to encourage you, if you will, to help us to continue this conversation. We have these transcripts essentially, visually and virtually, but I'm hoping that they will come together soon so that we can begin to pull together all of the rich wisdom and experience and recommendations that the Spirit of the Divine has spoken into us as a community. Please support our broadcast by sending a donation. Please support our future and what we intend to do and what we plan to do in this open and honest dialogue. Support us with Cash App, and our Cash App handle is $TFAM, TFAM annual, ANNUAL, or PayPal, www.paypal.me/TFAMjustice. Support us so that we can better expand and refine this opportunity, this outreach to all of us who are speaking, I believe, truth in love for the time that we are in. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Flunder, for that announcement. And again, we say thank you to all of our guests for being a part of Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight. Bishop-elect Sonia Williams, we're grateful for Real Inspiration Ministries, Fellowship United Church of Christ, we are affectionately known as RIM, a radically inspired movement, and they are saying welcome home every Sunday at 12:30 p.m. And you can check out where their services are, what they're going to be doing in community by going to www.rimatlanta.org. That's www.rimatlanta.org. We also have the Healing Place Apothecary. It is owned and operated by Nubian Flunder. She is the founder, and you can go to her website at www.thp, which stands for the Healing Place Apothecary.com. That's www.thpapothecary.com. You can find so many different things for your skin, to help develop your skin, to help your skin take away blemishes, and so many other things that she has. Please support her business. We have also a Sky Michelle Teas and Things. You can go to her website at www.skymichelle.com. All items can be customized. We have a special collection for Juneteenth, which is right around the corner. If you need a Juneteenth t-shirt, please place your order as soon as possible so that we can get that to you. We have a Dope Black collection, and we have quotes that are by Bishop Flunder as well. Please go to the website and check it out. Thank you all so very much. Then we have Kara Solutions. Focus on your passion. Let Kara handle the rest. Administrative, business, and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith and community-based organizations. You can go to www.kara-solutions.com. That's www.kara-solutions.com. If you're trying to be virtual, you need any tech assistance, she also provides that as well. Remembering, we are reimagining, we are reinventing, we are revisioning. And so please contact Kara Solutions to help you handle that. If you want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers, please go to beyondthegatekeepershow@gmail.com. That's beyondthegatekeepershow@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us. God bless you. Have a great night.
Very much.